Arguments for how their definition of prostitution differs with the definition that the Combs team has put forward. Remember, and you just laid it out right there, the Combs team is essentially saying that because Combs wasn't directly involved with some of the actions like the transporting or directly paying, that he wouldn't necessarily be qualified as a prostitution in this case, as a pimp, as one would say.
So the judge is weighing whether to overturn the Sean Diddy Combs prostitution-related convictions. Now, can they do that? I mean, he was convicted, right? The conviction, it says what he's convicted of. Combs was found guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution after a trial in July 2025. Each of these counts carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. He's acquitted of the more serious charges. So can they just overturn something? Now my thing is, Diddy he's been in jail for a minute, and from my understanding, these charges, when they're other people, these charges people get a year for. But let's see what the quote-unquote experts have to say about this real quick.
Sean Diddy Combs is back in court for the first time since his high-stakes trial this summer. The music mogul's attorneys are trying to get his conviction on prostitution charges dropped. They say they shouldn't apply to Combs because he was a voyeur, not a pimp. ABC News investigative reporter Olivia Rubens outside the courthouse and ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer all.
Now that is interesting, saying he's a voyeur, because if you actually think about it, the only person that was engaging in quote-unquote prostitution was Cassie. She was the one that was actually getting, you know what I'm saying, getting it in. He was watching. In most cases, he was in the dark, in the back, probably beating his meat. And then after that, the dude would jizz on Cassie and then he'll smash it. So he wasn't paying no money. He wasn't doing nothing. Diddy must have had lawyers look over lots and lots of ways to get away with this. He's a billionaire. At least he was. But let's continue the story.
All here to talk through this. So, Olivia, what's the latest in court?
Diane, I was just inside the courthouse watching some of these arguments play out, and when I was in there, the prosecutors were actually debating making their arguments for how their definition of prostitution differs with the definition that the Combs team has put forward. Remember, and you just laid it out right there, the Combs team is essentially saying that because Combs wasn't directly involved with some of the actions like the transporting or directly paying, that he wouldn't necessarily be qualified as a prostitution in this case, as a pimp, as one would say, but rather that this, as you said, was voyeurism or some amateur form of pornography, which is why they were filming some of the so-called freak-offs that were centered in this case. But the prosecutor is saying that's not necessarily our definition there, and continuing to make their case to the judge. I will say this hearing has now been going on, Diane, for almost an hour and a half. I did see Sean Combs sitting there in one of the rows with his attorneys, passing some notes and watching the arguments play out.
Brian, you say you think it's unlikely.
So they're talking about everybody's definition of prostitution. So there should be only one definition of prostitution, right? Definition of prostitution. Prostitution. There we go. Prostitution.
Prostitution.
The practice or occupation of engaging in sexual activity with someone for payment. So these men that were coming and doing all these things, because you know they all talked, none of them said that they did anything with Diddy. They only said they engaged with Cassie. And in the case here, who are the prostitutes? The men are the prostitutes, right? So where are their charges at? The only one that was engaging was Cassie. And it says very clear, for payment. Was Diddy her pimp? No, because she was paying them. gets real confusing.
The judge overturns these convictions or gives Combs a new trial, but they could help him on appeal.
Yeah, so the reason why I say that is at different points of a stage, there are different standards in which you need to prove your case. We all know the proof beyond a reasonable doubt when it comes to the actual trial itself. But when we're talking about this type of motion, we're saying in the light most favorable to the prosecution, they still lose. That is a high standard for a defense team to win. But I do think that some of these arguments, when you're talking about the constitutionality of these charges as they apply on these facts, are the facts not properly fitting into what this law is supposed to prohibit? I think on appeal, when the standard is different, there may be a strong argument there. They are making some of those arguments now. What exactly is the definition of prostitution? There is none in the federal system. Is it typically where it involves what you call a pimp, so someone who services another individual by selling off an individual for sexual favors or whatever it may be, or a John, someone who purchases that individual for that, or is it someone who watches what the pimp and the John does? And the defense is saying, well, someone who watches isn't a part of this transaction. It's only the people who participated in it. That definition may be something that I think is stronger on appeal.
Could these...
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's the only thing that shows prostitution. The only one that Diddy was smashing was Cassie during this whole thing. You know? Let's look at this from another light. Different news team, different people. Let's see what they got to say real quick.
Diddy Combs back in court today in an effort to have his guilty verdict thrown out. Combs is facing sentencing next month for his conviction on prostitution charges. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman has been following the case and has more from the outside of the courthouse in New York City.
Sean Combs is back in court for the first time since the day of his verdict. Now, Sean Combs ended up being convicted of 2 charges. Those were transportation for the purpose of prostitution charges. He was let off on the more severe...
Bro, I didn't know they were wrong with that. Hey, KK, I need some more baby oil. Who's KK?
Charges of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. But even with these lesser charges, Combs' attorneys have been arguing that those convictions should be thrown out or that there should be a new trial if the judge is not willing to do that. This is a hearing on the post-trial motions. The judge is listening to arguments from the parties on these issues. What Combs' attorneys say is that this is an unprecedented use of the Mann Act, the federal law that makes it illegal to transport people across state lines for the purpose of prostitution. They say that these were consenting adults having sex and that this Mann Act has never been used in this way for conviction. Now, if the judge won't throw out the convictions, they say that a new trial is necessary because of the severe spillover prejudice from reams of inflammatory evidence that was related to those other charges that Combs was ultimately not found guilty on. There is...
All right, so the Mann Act, for those who don't know, the Mann Act is in fact a racist law. I'm not just saying that. Its roots is from stopping black dudes from messing with white women driving across state lines. There's been other people that have get convicted with the Mann Act. R. Kelly. Look, it says right here, the Mann Act, officially the White Slave Traffic Act, is a U.S. federal law criminalizing the transportation of any person across state or international borders for the purpose of prostitution, debauchery, or other immoral sexual purposes. That's such a gray area. Prostitution is prostitution. We know what prostitution is. But the whole debauchery and immoral sexual purpose passed in 1910 to combat forced sexual slavery and human trafficking. So that makes sense. But we all know who's famous for getting hit with that was the world heavyweight champion Jack Johnson. They hated him with the white woman. So I'm not going to go too much into that because it's getting off the point. But yeah, R. Kelly got hit with that shit, like I said. So let me know. What do y'all think is going to happen? Let me know in the comments. Is Diddy going down or what? Is he going down or what? All right. If you made it to the end of this video, please subscribe. I'm doing videos like this all the time. Subscribe to get more videos of this nature, to see what your boy KJ Media has to say. Notifications, turn them on. All right. I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers. I'm on my way there. Almost there. I'm almost there. All right. But it's your boy KJ Media 100. I'm out.